Either you have a lot more money than I think, um, or you're not as smart as I think. One of those two.
You might not want to colonize Mars like Elon Musk, so you might
Right.
not need $400 billion.
Right.
But if you just want to have a life where you can go to vacation every now and then,
And
travel
you've-
the world, explore new things, I think for me, I look at it mostly around lifestyle
Okay.
more than the actual number in the bank. There's always what you can afford, and then there's always the lifestyle that you want. Most times, the lifestyle you want is not what you can afford. It's always about how much you retain more than how much you earn.
Yeah.
It's not always a good idea to reveal your current salary because they might use that as a basis to now give you an offer, which is not really relevant in this context.
Did they ask you for it and you tell them I will give it to you?
I think, yeah. So I pulled out that money. I now saw that you can actually have $500,000 at one point.
You do
The
with
question is, what did I
$500,000?
do with the money?
Yes.
I bought Bitcoin.
I think he has a lot more money than I thought. That's why finances was ranked number 2 for him. Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of Financially Incorrect. I am your host, Barrack. Love and Manifestable is an event being put together by 2 podcasts. That's Financially Incorrect and So This Is Love. And we want to talk about 2 of the most important things for adults to succeed in this life, and that's love and money. Nobody teaches us about any of these things. So we're hoping to sort of, discover and walk in the dark and scrape and find a few things that we can learn to help us thrive. Of course, this episode, as is this event, is sponsored by FXPesa. Today, I want to talk to you guys who are already trading, who are enjoying the platform, whether you're in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, or across the world. I don't know if you know this, you can earn up to $100 if you refer a friend and they begin to trade. So all of you guys who are trading on the FXPesa platform and you're enjoying it and you want someone else who has disposable income and you feel like this is a good investment for them to make and a place to be able to make some good returns, please do refer them. Again, links will be in the description box. You can earn up to $100, I guess, through the FXPesa referral program. Today, I have a money journey that's coming all the way from Ireland. He's a Kenyan, although lives in Ireland right now. He's been there for 3 years. Welcome to the show, Dennis Wyre.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm a fan of the show.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be on this side of the camera and looking forward to having a good conversation.
And seeing how small this room actually is in reality.
Yeah, it doesn't really look like that on the camera.
Welcome. For a certain generation, I guess people born maybe just before me and maybe just below me, the name Wairey is, means something, I guess. I guess he told us he's like your distant cousin. You've been like to 2 events where he's been at.
Yeah. So that used to be my thing back in the day.
Yeah.
It used to be like everybody like wanted to know who's this Wyre guy. So that was quite nice. As in primary school,
It was like a good conversation
starter.
Point. Yeah.
It got me like a bit famous in the school.
Yeah.
Just riding that Wyre wave. But yeah.
I didn't even know that was his actual name, so I guess that's good to know today. I thought it was like his
Stage name.
Yeah, I thought it was a stage name, but it's good to know that's an actual.
It's Kevin Wyre. It's just different spelling when you spell it out, but
it's the same.
It's the same name.
Okay, so my first question, as usual, not necessarily, but this one is sort of money related. There's a guy I follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, and I believe Instagram. His name is Sahil Bloom. He's one of these, I guess there's so many of them these days. It's like motivation speaker, come business entrepreneur, come sort of like the guy who's done Stephen Bartlett, the guy who's done Diary of a CEO as well. Anyway, Sahil Bloom is one of those kinds of guys, and he's written this book, 5 Types of Wealth. I haven't read it yet, but I do want to read it. But I asked ChatGPT to summarize the 5 types of wealth that he talks about in his book, and I want to ask you how you'd rate this for your life, right? So the first one is financial wealth. And financial wealth this is the most conventional form measured in terms of money, assets. It includes cash, investment, and property. The second kind is time wealth. This refers to the freedom to use your time as you wish, often achieved through financial independence. The more time wealth you have, the more control you have over how you spend your days. Number 3, social wealth. This encompasses relationships and networks that provide support, opportunities, and connections. Strong social networks can lead to personal and professional growth. 4th type of wealth is intellectual wealth. This type includes knowledge, skills, and experiences that enhance your ability to navigate life and make informed decisions. Continuous learning contributes to intellectual wealth. And the 5th is emotional wealth. This refers to mental and emotional well-being, which includes happiness, fulfillment, and resilience. Emotional wealth is crucial for overall life satisfaction. So my question is, how would you rank this in order of what you think you're most wealthiest at right now, and why?
Okay, that's an interesting one. And
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense because I can see how some of the things are in my life. So maybe I would go with first being intellectual. Is that intellectual?
Yeah, intellectual wealth. Yeah.
I think that because I think the last couple of years been really trying to learn new skills and just hone on and improve my skills. The next one I'd say is financial.
Okay.
As number two. Number three, I'd say social. Although this is always a bit of a challenge when you're living abroad, so I'd say that might be has taken a bit of a dip. The other two would be
Time and emotional.
Yeah, I'd say time is really the one that I feel I'm not where I'd love to be. So I think yeah, sometimes you have to pull in long hours, and that might affect how much time you have to just do the things you want to do. And then I'd say lastly, emotional.
You think emotional wealth is like your brokest element of the 5 elements of wealth that he's described?
I don't know if maybe by a close margin, I would say.
Between time and emotional.
Yeah, because I don't know how you measure emotional wealth, to be honest.
I mean, I think his theory via ChatGPT is, it's crucial for overall life satisfaction. I mean, I guess the way that you feel about yourself, the way you feel with your consciousness and emotion and self-awareness and all those things really determine how happy you truly are, no?
Yeah. Can you have like all of them tying at number 3? Because when you have to rank them, it puts you something has to be number 5.
Yeah, something has to be. Something's got to give.
Maybe
Yeah,
tie 3. The last 3 are tied at number 3.
Okay, I am impressed that I guess financial wealth is right up there for you, because I mean, either you have a lot more money than I think, or you're not as smart as I think, one of those two. But you work at Meta, so I doubt, so you must have more money than I think.
I think it's not, for me, how I look at it. I know you mentioned financial is a classic money, but it's like what it can help you to do. And are you able to do most of the things that you want to do? Because I feel like that's very important at whatever level you have. So you might not want to colonize Mars like Elon Musk. So you might not need $400 billion.
Right.
But if you just want to have a life where you can go to vacation every now and then, travel the world, explore new things, I think you might not need as much money. And it's a personal decision to just decide this is some amount that is enough for my lifestyle. I think for me, I look at it mostly around lifestyle more than the actual number in the bank.
Okay. Fair enough. Tell me a little bit about your job right now at Meta and what you do. And and I guess how you even got to Ireland.
Okay, so I currently work as a strategic account manager for Meta for the Sub-Saharan Africa region. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland, as you mentioned, and I've been there since October 2021. So it's been 3 years, 5 months. I was just checking that today. How I got there, I got a job from Safaricom. Previously, I used to be at Safaricom in the digital team. I saw an application online. It was during just post-COVID 21, so we were doing virtual interviews. I did multiple rounds of interviews and got the job, and the paperwork was done, which took a bit of some time, and then eventually traveled out in October. So between interviewing in January, I think signing the offer in April 21, I flew out in October.
When did you resign?
After you have all the documents and you're ready to book a ticket, that's when you're told to resign, and you only resign to serve notice, and then you move. So
you signed the offer in April?
Yeah.
So technically speaking, you resigned in September?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then what it is that I do, essentially, most people actually don't know this, but Facebook makes money through advertising, and it has a lot of companies. I think we're just discussing about FXPesa as a whole. They leverage Facebook advertising for advertising. And as an account manager, I get to work with some of those businesses to help them really sharpen their strategy online and make the most out of the platform, because the platform keeps evolving. And so I have a portfolio of clients that I work with across the SSA region, and my role is just to help them use the platform as much as possible and grow. Yeah, that's essentially what I do.
I don't know if you can answer any of the questions I'm going to ask now, and I don't even know if this would run on the Meta platform. But when you see different articles and different narratives in the news around Meta, what's the environment within the office that you work in? So, for example, I want to say it was earlier this year or late last year, where Elon Musk put up an article talking about Meta inflating numbers, inflating their numbers for advertisers, or a couple of months, I think it was a month ago, with just before President Donald Trump came in, with Meta, letting go of its what is it called?
Content moderation.
Yes, contribution policies and basically verification of data. What's the environment within the office like around some of those elements? And do you ever feel conflicted at all?
Yeah, good question. So I think everybody has their own opinion and how they think many companies should run. Personally, I try to focus on my job, because what happens with these big companies, they'll always be on the news. So if you follow what people are saying about Meta, there's always going to be something more positive and negative. I think it's just about even everything. Even I remember before Meta, even at Safaricom, there's always news articles about what Safaricom should be doing, what it's not doing. It's always trending. So I think what I'm really trying to do personally is to kind of have an identity outside work, so that I'm working at Meta at this point in time. I love the job, but also I'm not Meta. Meta is a whole company with like 80,000 employees. So sometimes, you just will read things. You'll agree with some, you might disagree with some, but you can't feel too focused on those kind of things.
Be honest. Is that your media training answer? Because that sounds and no whatever to it. I mean, I'm 100% sure any big company employees take it through some sort of media training and be like, if you're asked about Meta, disassociate yourself, but don't disassociate yourself and say that you work on, you focus on your job.
Yeah, maybe the thing I'll say is I'm not really authorized to talk on behalf of the company.
Of course,
obviously. So these are just my views.
Yeah.
So like anything I say is obviously my opinion, and I think the thing is just, are you in a position to talk about the company and its policies, and can you even influence them? That's not. That's
a totally different kettle of fish.
You can't spend a lot of time discussing them and talking with them, with friends, with colleagues. But I think what we just try to do is do the job.
Is you focus on your job.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
There's a phrase: "Focus on what you can control."
Okay.
Because so that just keeps you to just focus on what. Yeah.
All right. So where does your money journey begin? If you were to, I guess, try and look back into where your money story starts, where does it start?
Yeah, so this it starts from way back. I think when I was at primary school, so I can go way from primary school, when I started some form of entrepreneurship or business. At that point, I think the almost only business was selling snacks. I was in boarding school from class 6 to 10, from 6 to 8. So I used to have sell biscuits from a box into specific single units. At that time, I didn't really know about money, but I just started the entrepreneurship journey. In high school, I was in a day school, and I used to, I think at that point, we were selling CDs. So content, music, movies, all that kind of stuff. At that point,
the 5-in-1 movies.
The 5-in-1 movies.
Right.
It was when you used to burn movies on a CD, and then you can have even games, computer games. So anything that you can put in a DVD, actually, we used to sell that. At that point, I started now knowing the concept of money. I was a teenager, so at that point, the real goal was just to buy better clothes. And just improve your lifestyle a bit from what you're given as pocket money.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I started now understanding there's where you are in life, and then money can actually take you to different places.
Yeah.
And there's now different ways you can use to create money.
Okay. What was the environment, your family environment like?
Yeah, so my mom, and I was just thinking about this as I was prepping for this. She used to be employed, or she's been employed all her life. The family setup for me was, I was raised by a single mom. So my mom and dad were together, but when I was born, they split up. So, but she's provided all through her job. But because she got me as the last born quite late, she retired when I was still in my teens. And so I saw the transition between full-time employment from my mom to her now entrepreneurship journey as well. So I saw how she got into various businesses to try and provide for the family, and just the transition of post-employment, how that could look like. But I wouldn't say I slept hungry by any means. I just saw now two worlds, where one world it was stable, it was very stable. And then now when she got into entrepreneurship, it wasn't bad, but I could start seeing how there's days where we're eating, doing the big shopping, and then there's days where we're not doing the big shopping. So I got to just have an idea of, okay, there's two paths you can choose, and I don't think there's a right or wrong one. You just need to figure out which one you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Have you ever held it against your dad? It doesn't sound like he was there financially or provided financially for you or for your family setup. Was it a thing that you ever felt, or even whether it was as a child or now as an adult?
That's a good question, actually. I've never thought about it like that. I obviously have not held him against, I haven't held anything against him, but I think it's one of the things that I try to be very intentional to be present. I think as men, I think it's something that we need to be very clear about. And being present fathers, I think I have a lot of friends who have similar stories raised by single moms. So I think it just challenges me to try to be present when I become a father. But I have not particularly held anything against him financially. Maybe just some of the lessons, because I have friends whose role models are their dads, and that's something I can't relate to. So I think from that perspective, there's some things I feel I missed. But from a financial perspective, I think my mom came through. So I celebrate her a lot more because of that.
Okay, interesting. I guess, yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely living in a generation now where there's definitely going to be more and more, I guess, blended families, more and more single parents and things like that. And I guess, it is what it is. But, kudos to you for not holding anything against him financially. I mean, so that means that there's no time where you ever thought, if my dad had been in the picture, or if my parents were still together, I would have been able to afford this. There's no trip you didn't miss that made you feel some type of way. There's no like pair of boots or anything in that of that kind, or any thought of that nature that you ever had.
Yeah, the honest truth is I did have moments like that, especially during like visiting days where you see like a family come with the dad and the mom. But mostly I was not even aware of it, because you see, when you grow up and as a young child, you just see your mom, your bro, your sis, you think that's the family unit. So only later in life is when you start realizing actually there's a guy missing in the family picture. So I never really had strong emotions around it. But obviously I was conscious about it as I got older. So like late primary school, high school, I started wondering, but I don't think it was something that was really driving me mad or anything like that.
So who do you think then you imprinted on from when you were growing up, from a financial perspective, from that you learned how to be, and this is going to sound so, and it's not like woke. I wouldn't I wouldn't qualify myself as like a super woke individual, but who did you imprint on to copy male financial habits, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not thinking of someone at the moment. Like no one is coming to mind. And it's something now I'm more conscious about. So right now I'm really trying to surround myself with like male figures and father figures who are really raising their families and all that. But growing up, I think my mom just became my dad and my mom all together. I think I just learned a lot from her. Because even the other funny thing is on her family, like an extended family, I only had one uncle. So like he was almost the only father figure sort of person that I could look at. And so, yeah, I think I just didn't have a lot of male influence financially growing up, but I wasn't conscious of it for the most part.
Have you been in any situation where you felt that that's provided a gap?
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Yeah, I'll give you, or the upbringing that you had, seeing your mom as your dad and your mom, giving you impact. I'll give you an example. I also was raised, and I've said this so many times, and I guess for anyone who's listening to this podcast, I don't say it as a result of like who is me. Like I'm just saying it because it's a contextual story that makes sense. Yeah, that's all. But I also grew up in a single mom household, and something that I saw was my mom would pay a lot of bills. So even, of course, first of all, in the house would pay all the bills. But then, like, even if we would go out, we're at a restaurant and there would be, whether it's an uncle, whether it's a family friend, whatever the case is, but my mom was there, my mom would pay. So for me, I had this notion of a very, that women are very independent and women can pay and women can do this and women can do that. And there are a couple of instances where I probably, as a result of what I saw, I got into a couple of sticky situations, not because I didn't want to pay a bill, but because I was like, oh, I guess, like, it's fine. But then society is different. It's like, no, a man ought to pay bills and ought to pay this, ought to pay this. And this, by the way, does not represent my current position on whether I should pay bills or at date
Yeah.
or at dates or not. My wife can attest. But yeah.
And that's a good topic, so we can
Yeah.
even go into that.
So that's my- yeah,
because
that's my
that's
question,
something
yeah.
I'm currently experiencing. So I feel like now that you talked about it, I did grow up in a world where women were empowered. Like I didn't see this. Maybe didn't have a clear picture of the roles that a guy should provide and pay all bills and things like that. So it was for me more of an equal standing.
Yeah.
So if you're going Dutch, you split bills 50-50.
Yeah.
Obviously, also generations have changed, and I think people's view on money keeps evolving. So I find myself also, especially early on, being expecting some sort of middle ground.
Yeah.
You meet somewhere. So maybe for me, it's been a bit of a challenge to be comfortable with someone who's expecting to not contribute at all. Because I feel like there's ways in which you can provide voluntarily, but someone can offer. Even if you're sure you're going to pay the bill, someone can pretend that they're offering to tip someone. But if you just come with zero expectations to contribute financially to a bill, because I think you mentioned in the dating context, I find that I struggle a bit with that.
Yeah.
Not used to. I currently struggle a bit with that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's one of the things maybe as a result of my grade.
Maybe
upbringing.
that's what you experience. Yeah, there's this tweet I saw, and I hope I can find it. And by the way, for me, in terms of trying to provide a conclusive thoughts around compensation and women, it's very complicated. It's very
it's
layered.
complex.
You know, once you get into a serious relationship, once you get kids, like that's a whole other topic of families. And this we're just talking about like the initial
Dating,
social
getting to know each other.
exactly.
Even in social setups where you're like hanging out as a group of friends, you're going for bowling, and then there's 3 guys, 7 ladies,
Yeah.
and then the bill comes.
And it's-
so those kind of context.
Exactly. So I saw this tweet by this lady. I think she lives in London, and I hope I can find it and it'll be put here. And she basically says she's in her what I would assume late 20s, early 30s. She's quote unquote struggling, and by struggling here, I don't think like struggling, but trying to figure out how to pay her bills, trying to figure out how to pay her car, trying to figure out how to do everything else. And so she said, I cannot imagine what it must be like for a man who's doing a man my age who's doing all of these things as well, and then trying to look for money to spend on dates and spend on any of those things. So curious about whether that's a bit of context into what your experience is like and expectations.
Yeah, so haven't really experienced it a lot, but recently, I think, especially in Kenya, because I spent time in Dublin and in Kenya, I think I recently had a conversation with one of my friends around a girlfriend allowance, which is a very controversial topic, and it could get complicated, but I don't know if I'm super supportive on having someone expect a girlfriend allowance, but I don't know if, as you're saying, as you date and as you get to know someone, it could be something that you guys decide to do as a couple, leading to marriage. Because I feel like one of the things, a stat I saw is that the number one thing that leads to divorce is usually finances. And so as you're getting serious with someone, it's good to be open about finances. But early on, it could be something that could be like a bit of a turn off where someone just is expecting too much financially from you, and you're mainly around the same age, maybe in the same industry, working in the same company. So you're pretty much earning around the same. And then they have this expectation that you're their financial provider. I feel like that doesn't really sit too well with me.
Yeah. Have you found that conversation is different in Dublin and here?
It is.
Is there girlfriend? It's different. Is there girlfriend allowance in Dublin?
I feel
as
like
well?
it's a bit different, and obviously there's a lot of differences between the culture and job opportunities and income levels. But there's definitely more pronounced here than there, from my experience so far. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I guess that's sort of understanding what your upbringing and the context that had on you and how you're living right now. So, if we go back to like the pure timeline of your financial journey, so you're entrepreneur, essentially primary school, high school, you're still entrepreneuring. What happens at university?
Yeah. So at uni is when I got into serious entrepreneurship, and the reason that drove me to that is there's always what you can afford, and then there's always the lifestyle that you want. And I go back to lifestyle. And so most times the lifestyle you want is not what you can afford. So that forced me to get into entrepreneurship purely because at high school, at campus, you really can't get a job. And I tried getting some online jobs then, but most of the time you don't have the skills to really get paid online and stuff like that. So at that point, I did 2 businesses. One, I'll not talk too much about it because it was not like I'm in business, but I used to be one of those guys who sells data bundles. I don't know if you know those guys who sells bundles cheaper than the actual Airtel.
No, I actually do not.
Yeah, so there's this business. It was fascinating. I went to JCOT. I saw a lot of posters of people selling data bundles cheaper than Safaricom then. So for me, it was quite fascinating. And then I was curious. One of the things about me, I'm quite curious to find out how they're able to do this. Essentially, and I got into that business. But basically, what used to happen is you buy like a big bundle, like a 25 GB, and then you sell it into smaller denominations at a margin. And so that used to be like a very interesting business because it had very little costs and doesn't really need a lot of skills. And it was when smartphones were becoming a thing. So that was one of the things we did first, like 6 months in campus. And it was an interesting business because like it's pure profit. There's really no costs. But then later I now formed a clothesline. I was telling you guys about some of the brands I did. So with a friend who we just joined campus with, we started a clothesline called Wairey, which I think was really now my foray into entrepreneurship, because at that point now we registered a company and we started producing shirts initially. Then we moved into hoodies and snoodies and a lot of dashiki. So we did that for a couple of years. And I think that was really when I really now saw like the business side of things. During that time, I was mainly learning a lot about running the business, so to speak, and then not really making the most of the money because we weren't really doing a good job at accounting. And I think that's one of the things I feel like businesses need to be careful about is you kind of make some shots, you sell them, then you kind of divide the money 50-50 and you go home. So we were investing in the business, but we're not really accounting. So I can't know how much money we made profit and if it was growing and all that. But I think at that point, I was so into business. At that point, I thought that I would be a full-time entrepreneur
for life.
So I didn't think I would actually go into into employment. But then that changed, I think, when I finished school.
At uni, was your mom catering to all of your expenses, covering everything for you? What was that uni life like? And so now this money that you're making from the t-shirt business, was that just going into your extra like pocket weekend money? Or did you go to like bigger purchases or things like that?
Yeah, so I think my mom was catering for the core costs. So like fees, pocket money, rent. And then at that time, there was a lot of events coming up. And, in campus, you're living by yourself. You want to do many events. You want to meet people. You want to travel. So it was catering for my discretionary expenses. And that was the role that it used to do. And gadgets. So I used to like buying a lot of phones back then. So it was pretty much discretionary expenses is what the business was catering for.
Okay, so how do you then transition? Because you said it was relatively successful, I guess, for a campus student. How do you then transition to, I'm going to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life to become an employee?
So something interesting happened. So fast forward, I moved from the first brand that we started, the Wairey, to Good Vibes. So I started a brand on my own, and then
was there a disagreement between?
I think part of it was just in terms of long-term plans, because when you start a business in campus, you're just thinking about what you're gonna do next week, next month. Like we didn't have long-term planning in place. So I ended up starting a separate brand, and this was when I was about to be done with campus, and I started very, very similar business. But then the point which I had a turning point was I got a huge order to do a lot of stuff, and at that point I was still the business. When you're a small business, there's no business; it's you are the business. And then I got unwell, so I was doing an eye surgery, and I was told not to look at a screen for like 2 weeks and not to leave the house for like a month. So this was at a point where I'm delivering one of the biggest orders
How big was the
business. I was doing about 300 pieces for an organization, which it was the biggest order at some point.
That would be about how much? 300 pieces at how much?
So if you're doing, maybe it was about like 1,000 to 1,500 per piece for 300 pieces. This is just when I'm like fourth year. So at that point I was like, this is it. At that point I was sure I'm not quit my job and just focus on it. But when I got unwell, it was really a struggle to deliver that daily order. And I saw now an ugly side of business, which was the client was getting impatient. What helped me was my bro stepped in. He completed the order. We didn't make the margin that we wanted to make because at that point we were just doing to complete the order. We were late on time, so it wasn't a good experience for the customer at that time. But meanwhile, I'd started an internship at my first job while I was in my last months of campus, and I was paid the full month without showing up at work.
Because you were unwell.
Because I was unwell, and I was an intern, so I think nothing much really was dependent on me being there, but. that I think changed now my perspective in terms of I saw that with employment beyond the money, because initially I was just looking at the cash, there's benefits. Then there's a support system. It's a less lonely journey, especially in the beginning. So at that point, I started becoming more serious and started paying more attention. Also, I finished campus because at campus I couldn't really get a full-time job. So I finished campus, and then that experience, those two events, I think made me
Happening, you're like,
now
okay,
focus more
on the employment side of
work
things.
and then business as a side hustle, as opposed to focusing on business full time.
Okay. So I guess when you start making your own money, what are the first of all, how much money is it that you start making at the intern level and at the first sort of job that you get, and what do you start doing with that with your
Sure.
money?
So to be honest, it might almost be like a pay cut, because like my first internship, I was even laughing about it with the person who used to pay me. It was 10K, 10,000 shillings a month, and it was, I think, paid in cash. I'm guessing it was part of petty cash. So we were laughing about, he just used to chomwa it from the
Whatever
pocket,
then.
and then 1, 2, 3, 10, and then gives me. But at that time, I wasn't really driven by the money. The job was a social media marketing intern, something like that. And so I was more interested in the skills and the platform. I think I looked at that job as a platform to learn more and to run, like we're running social media campaigns with the company's money, basically. So I was looking at it more of a learning curve, and I was still running the business on the side. So it was a very chilled out environment, and I was able to run a business on the side. But the actual amount was 10,000 a month for the first 3 months as an intern.
Okay. And then you get into agency, right?
No, so I now got into full-time employment shortly. Like after the internship, it moved to 25K and then later to 55. The advantage of working in a startup is that you have one-on-one access to the CEO or the leadership team. So it's not like you have a contract that is very like specific.
Right.
So I was able to negotiate as my roles continue to grow. That's I think that's the journey.
What is that conversation like? So every time you felt like you are doing new roles, you just walk into the CEO's office and be like, "Hey, I
This
feel like
is
I'm taking on more. Could you please add my
So
pay?"
the first one was just moving from intern to full time. So that was 10K to 25, and then the second one was people leave all the time. So when someone leaves, I used to take on more responsibilities, and then I used to argue that now that I'm doing this person's job, obviously you're not paying this person anymore because he's not around. Can we have a conversation around finances? So that used to be my tactic.
Okay. I mean, but what's your? Because I'm assuming, I've never really been in that position, but I'm assuming that it's a bit of a nerve-wracking conversation because the person can say no. What happens if the person says no? Do you just like sit on your salary with more responsibilities? How do you really prove your worth and say, you know what, I'm actually doing this and I'm doing more and I would do this better? What's that conversation like?
So I think practically it's just breaking down the jobs and the thing you're doing. So like for me, I was doing just social media stuff in the beginning for 3 months. I finished that. Then the person that left a big scope of work. So and I thought they were going to be replaced by someone else. So I knew that there's a budget because there was someone that was getting paid. So my argument was like, we can save money to the company by paying me a fraction of what they used to earn and tell me the kind of goals I need to achieve to get that. So it wasn't also an instant conversation. So like you leave the room with the salary. It was okay. Maybe you start now doing this and that, and then we can have a review maybe in a month or 2 months time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
it was more
eventually,
of a business case.
right. Okay. So you eventually get to the 55K space. And then what happens? Is that when you shift?
Yeah, so I think what drove me to shift from the startup to agency was I just wanted to learn more stuff. So I got to learn about agencies. Agencies typically, for those who don't know, work with the biggest clients in the country. So if you look at the biggest brands in Nairobi, they're pretty much run by agencies. So at a startup, you can learn a lot, but you're kind of limited to what the startup is doing. So that was my key driver. But obviously, I knew that if you're having bigger budgets and bigger clients, obviously you have to be paid a lot more. So that's what got me to be interested in working at an agency. I saw an opening and then went for an interview, and that's how I transitioned into agency.
Okay. So how long do you work at agency for? What are you making? And what are you doing with your money then? Because now it's, I guess, it's a lot more money, right?
Yeah. So at agency, I think I took advice from my sister. So I'm a last born of 3. My sister is a very key figure in my life because she's like 13 years older than me. So she's been working for a while. So because I was still living at home, not having much expenses, I was asking her what should I do with the money. So one of the things she mentioned is I should buy like a plot. I think that was the time when everybody was buying plots, and there was a payment plan. So you can actually do a payment plan to buy a plot, and that's what I did. So a big chunk of money I used to buy a plot. I wasn't really convinced that that's the best thing to do with my money, but I think I was just leveraging on the fact that she's older. She kind of has my best interest at heart. So that's what I did, because the risk for me was if I don't do something constructive, I'll end up just buying devices, going out, and not really having something to call that I can put.
Right.
Yeah, something that I can own after.
How much did the plot eventually cost, and how long did it take you to pay for it?
So, and it's even a funny story at this point. So the plot was, I think, 550K, and the contribution was, I think, 25K or thereabouts, or 30K, something. It was like 12 to 16 months.
Yeah.
So I started contributing to it every now and then eventually finished the payment. The funny story becomes, after some time, there was no title deed coming out from the plot. So I was wondering, this investment plan, like what's going to happen? So we started following up on emails and stuff, but then eventually someone mentioned an option to get a refund if you want out, and I took that out. Like I didn't even make it further. I don't know if it was they were suggesting or they're just throwing it in the air, but they said,
like, give back
you want, we
money.
can give you. I was like, yeah, give it to me now.
Yeah.
So I pulled out that money. And I think that was now an interesting revelation for me, because I now saw that you can actually have $500,000 at one point, because at that point you can't have such an amount with you at once. So I think that process, I think it ended up unlocking that amount of money for me.
And what did you do with the $500,000?
What did I do with the money?
Yes.
I bought Bitcoin.
You bought Bitcoin?
I bought Bitcoin.
What year was this?
This was a few years back. I think must have been 2017, 18, 19. 17, 18, maybe 18, 19.
Yeah.
And the reason I bought Bitcoin was just because of liquidation. Because I was wondering, even if we got the title for the plot, I couldn't liquidate the money. And I've always been keen to have money that is accessible. So, and then Bitcoin hype there was like super high. So, I bought Bitcoin at that time.
How much was it worth at that time?
It must have been around like 20 to 30K or thereabouts.
Right. When you're saying your story, I guess everyone in this room doesn't know, but Collins, our marketing manager, is seated over there, and when you're saying the story, he was laughing up until you said I bought Bitcoin, and then he sat up. He was like, hold on. Because I tried crypto like a while back, but I didn't do it like with like a significant amount like that. So that's what I did then. Obviously, with the thing with Bitcoin is you'll always be tempted to sell. So I've had sales and boughts in between. But that's what I did with that cash. And do you still have it now?
I still have chunks of it. Yeah. So I didn't sell everything.
But you made some good money.
I made some good money with it. Not as much, because always you think this is the highest high, and then you sell, and then it gets higher, you buy again, all that stuff.
At what rate were you selling at? When you were selling, what rate was it at?
I would say I returned my money back. So like the 500K.
Of course, you returned your money back.
So now, up until that point, now the rest I just keep it to wait for the future, because I think that's that was for me my concern. I was able to pull my money, so I got the liquidation I wanted, and then because it was growing, and I'm still employed, so I'm still earning. I don't want to buy any big purchases, so the rest of it is still there. Okay. But I think that's one of the moves that I think helped me.
So I think my notion at the beginning of this interview was correct. I think he has a lot more money than I thought. That's why finances was ranked number 2 for him. Anyway, so I guess at this point in time at the agency, right, when you move, how much are they paying you?
So at agency, I think I joined with about 75K.
Right.
It was a 1-year contract.
Okay.
Which my mom at the point was so against it, because she was it's called salary and pension about something. She really wanted like a full-time permanent job. I was looking at it very differently, because I saw it as an opportunity to negotiate after 1 year, because I think for me it's always an ongoing conversation. So so I started at 75K, and then after less than a year, because now when the contract is about to end, you kind of start prompting those conversations. I got promoted and moved to 100K.
Okay. Actually, I want to go back to a question about not so much the Bitcoin, but your process of investing in Bitcoin and even crypto.
Yeah.
And especially, I guess from 2 perspectives. At that point in time, I mean, yes, people may have known about it. I don't even know if I knew about Bitcoin crypto in 2017, 2018. But where did you get the information about it, and how did you trust it enough? Even with the crypto, you say you didn't play around with that that much of a figure. But even with the little money you were sort of investing in crypto, how did you even decide, you know what, it's worth taking the risk here? And then eventually when you got to investing $500,000 in Bitcoin, are you speaking to anybody and telling them, hey, I plan on putting $500,000 in this thing?
Yeah. So one of the things, I'll say two things I'll say about me is I've been very fortunate. Part of most of my story is about being in the right place at the right time. And then two is very curious. So I've always been curious around like how the wealthy people make money. So initially I was wanting to buy stock. I think it was around the Safaricom IPO time. So I wanted to buy stock, but then I was looking at returns, year-on-year returns, and Bitcoin at that point was like the best asset class. I think it still is. But yeah, it was a time when there was a lot of hype around it breaking new barriers. So it was just an asset class that looks interesting. And then also the fact that I was now in a digital role doing digital. So I was bought into the whole digital ecosystem. Even our business was purely run online. It was an online business. We never had a store at any point. So I think for me, it was just a good fit for an investment that's liquid, that I can get into. Obviously, I didn't consult people like my mom because they would not buy that idea. So part of it was also just you as an adult, you can make your call. It looked like an interesting one. And I had made some few money before that, making that big investment. Yeah.
And from in Kenya in 2017, 2018, 2019, who are you using as a broker to actually
so that was actually done? I think I even spent a lot of time just trying to get now how to buy it. So it was, I think, a mix of using a VPN or trying to get an address outside the country to register on one of these trading platforms, to then be able to have an account, to then be able to purchase the Bitcoin. So it was not a very straightforward process. I think I even got scammed at some point. There was like these exchanges or things that fell down during that process. But it took me trying to set up an account with an app that's not in the country, creating an account and looking for an address, utility bill. So it's a bit of a process, but once you have an account, it's easy to put money in. I think it's maybe harder to get money out. But yeah, I think if you have money and you have a card, so they were able to take it through a card.
Okay. Before you tell us about the process of taking money out, what's been the most tempted you've been to sell all of your whatever amount you had? Yeah.
So back to that thing for lifestyle.
No, not lifestyle.
No,
the most tempted, like in terms, because you see, it's. Like I'll give you an example. Like we had Geoffrey Odondo who was here who talked about how he bought stock into fiber cables just before the President Moi Kibaki came in, because they could see that he was going to come, there's going to be a technology, whatever. So he made like I think 30 times what he put in. However, he said it eventually got to like times that I think it was, I don't know, I'll get it wrong, but it was so much more exponential that he could have made so much more money. But so my question to you is, what is the most tempted, because you say you still have now, what's the most tempted you've been where it's like, this thing is worth so much money now, I should sell?
So first thing I did, I deleted the app at some point, just so that you don't look at the numbers, because with crypto you can't afford to look at the numbers on a regular basis. You'll sell, because sometimes you want to sell when it's low to just recoup some of your cash. So I think the moment I recouped the cash I put in, I was now less emotional about when I need to pull out. And then two, the question has always been to do what with the money? Because let's say I pull out and then I have the money in my bank, the asset that made me the cash that has now in the bank, what then do I do with it to continuously grow it? So I'm always looking for new asset classes to put money in. Nvidia, I think, was a good option, but I haven't found like a good place to put it out. So I struggle with, okay, I sell it, I have it in my bank, and then what? I don't have an answer to that question. And so
that's very logical.
Yeah, so I try to remove the emotion by just returning your money. Once you return your money, now you're like, you just rather keep it over there.
Okay, Collins, how much has Bitcoin? What's the highest amount it's been worth? Can you Google for us? I'm curious.
It's over 100K.
Yeah,
I think right now it's hovering around like one something. Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible. Anyway, okay, so then now you said in terms of getting your money out. So how did you get them, like physically? How did you get your 500K back?
So the withdrawal process is also not super complicated. I think you obviously need a card. You deposit to Visa and you deposit. I think it works similar to FXPesa. So you can put money in and put money out. I was just saying that it's usually harder to get an account and get started. But once you have an account and you started and you have investment, it's easier to withdraw. Right. Just put a withdrawal request and the money goes back to your bank.
Okay.
And obviously you do it in an amount that
It's 96,000 now.
96,000.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool. All right. At least, I mean, if you've paying attention to the interview, at least you have like some context of how much money our guy here potentially has made.
It's Bitcoin.
Anyway.
It's crypto.
Anyway, all right. So, all right. So we move on. I guess into your journey. You're now in agency. What's the agency space like? What it is, and do you learn anything from a financial perspective through your life at agency?
Yeah, so I think agency exposed me to how much people earn, I'd say. Because I feel like at a startup, you kind of know your salary, you know the CEO salary maybe, or you can estimate.
How much was your CEO
Well,
earning at your startup?
you can estimate salaries, but you just have a pool of like 6, 7, 10 guys.
Yeah.
But then when you go to an agency, you see an organization where you see people driving very fantastic cars. You start knowing that you can actually get a job that pays you $500,000, 600K. I think I wasn't exposed to that before agency. So that for me was one of the biggest things it showed me. It just showed me that there's a lot more earnings that you can make through employment, I would say.
How long do you stay in agency before you move on to Safaricom?
Less than 2 years. So I'd say like maybe 1 year, 6 months.
Okay. And at this point in time, you're paying for the land. No, or at this point in time, have you already gotten that money back?
So actually, I think I mixed up the story. So I started paying for the land when I moved from agency to Safaricom. I think that salary bump is what. That salary bump is what I used from, because the ones for agency, I think the salary bumps are not that high.
Yeah.
Because also those are gross numbers. So if you go to net, the numbers become less.
Much less.
But I think the land story is the bump I got from agency to Safaricom is what I put into the land project for the next like year and a half.
Okay. So Safaricom, what was that like? I mean, it seems like in terms of investments, other than I guess the digital stuff that you're looking to invest in and looking for different asset classes, it's land that you took back money from and invested. Is there anything else that you've looked at through the years? Are you at this point in time, are you looking at an emergency fund? Are you looking at anything of that nature?
So I think at Safaricom, because I joined 2019, COVID happened shortly after, or 2020. So that's when I got exposed into now financial literacy now, like I'd say a good one, through now emergency fund and things like money market funds. I don't know if they existed before 2019, but I just never had heard of them. So at that point, I put up an emergency fund. I think during COVID, we kind of saw how jobs were lost. So that's when I started an emergency fund. And then I think Safaricom also gives you like pension. So I started topping up my pension. So you can do voluntary contributions to your pension. So that's one of the things I did. I was meant to join the SACCO, but I didn't. So I think it was mainly emergency fund through a money market fund and their pension. Those are the two places that I think at Safaricom I used to put my money on.
And you wanted Safaricom very long, right? It's about a year and a bit.
About 2.5.
About 2.5 years. Okay. So I mean, and does that cater to all the money you're making, or or do you move out?
There's also life transition. So I think as I moved to Safaricom now, I eventually moved out. So now I started now managing my own expenses, and then I started seeing how life is expensive. So like furnishing a house is like a year project where you have to like it's almost a never ending project actually. Maybe a year. I used to be furnishing a house for a bachelor. But so furnishing a house I think took a lot of my expenses. But I started seeing new value of money, because I think to the most chunk I wasn't really having very serious expenses, where I wasn't paying rent, so there was no repercussions if you waste all your money. But I think once I started when I moved out, I started being more careful around just how much I spend, having a budget, and knowing what bills you need to pay by what time. I think that was maybe the other thing I did outside the property investment.
Right. Okay. And at Safaricom, at what level did you get your job at, and what would a person at that level expect to make?
So I think before Safaricom I was like at 100K. So I got like into mid 150Ks range at Safaricom. The thing at Safaricom though for me was the benefits, because now it was pensionable, it was more stable. I got to learn a lot more stuff. I got to expose to now people earning millions. Those bonuses. So I think for me, for the Safaricom move, was obviously good financially, but more than financially, I really appreciated the kind of exposure that working at a company like Safaricom gives you, and also the benefits, the non-monetary benefits, even the monetary benefits, they are just very good compared to what I'd seen before.
And what leads you to explore Meta as a potential employer now? Is it money related? Is it again just from your curiosity and wanting to learn new things and be in different spaces?
I think the main driver for me has always been curiosity and trying to learn and expand my network. So at Safaricom, I think I really got exposed to now in Nairobi, what happens outside Nairobi, because Safaricom does a lot of events in different towns. So it really exposed me to how big Kenya is. And then now at some point, I now wanted to explore further outside like the country. And so I was now thinking Safaricom is a great employer locally. But if you want to do things outside the country, it doesn't really offer you that option, or you don't have really presence outside. That was before Ethiopia. I think right now there's at least an opportunity to go to Ethiopia. So I started now exploring things like tech companies. Facebook and Google, I think, were top of mind. And it's just purely because of their scale and just how they've also rapidly grown. I was particularly drawn to Facebook or Meta because of how I've used it as a person. So like the business I was talking to you, I purely ran it through Instagram. And so I had a high affinity to the product. WhatsApp, I think we all use it almost every day. So I think that for me was a good company I'm looking at. But I always thought I'd wait for them to set up an office in Kenya and then apply in Kenya. I never really thought I'd apply for a role outside the country. I think this is also something my sister pushed me to do, because she told me, like, if you really want to explore the world, I think you really need to go out and explore it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the most challenging thing about the interview process?
It's rigorous, I'd say. First and foremost, it's like 4 rounds, and you're interviewing with different people. And then they have to like write notes about you, so you have to convince 4 sets of people. I kind of like that it was virtual, so I feel like if I was flown into Dublin to do it, it would have probably been a bit more intimidating, but the fact that I was doing it in my house, I think helped. So it's just a rigorous process. Then the other thing I'd say is you have a recruiter who helps you with the process. So they tell you what to expect in the interview, and they don't pull any surprises. I'd say my interview experience was quite nice. It's just a rigorous process. It's multiple rounds, back to back. The most challenging maybe is a case study. So in one of the rounds, you're given a case study in the first 5 minutes of the call, and then now you have the rest of the call to now tell you how you're going to handle it. So you just have to, you almost can't prepare for that, such a
the case study or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they give you a case study, you have 5 minutes to figure it out and
think through it,
and then
explain
give an answer.
how you're gonna. So such things you almost can't prep, but you just have to do some research.
Yeah. Did you at any point did you ever feel like you weren't gonna get it?
Yes, because I really didn't know, and at some point the recruiter got COVID, so there was a long time of silence. So I really didn't. I thought like it's gone. Yeah. And then one day I just get a call from a UK number. I think that's when they told me now that I got the offer. So yeah, for the longest time, once I finished the interview, I was just like, this one, if it comes, well and good. But I wasn't particularly sure that it's going to come through. I
read in a book that they ask this question to figure out whether you're smart enough to work at Google, and it's one of the questions they ask, which is why, I don't know if I've asked this before in the podcast. I have. Why are the sewer, the lids on the tops of the sewer circular and not any other shape?
They didn't ask me any questions. But
I've asked this before. But whoever I asked had the answer. I can't remember who it is. It was Victor. He had the answer.
Victor.
He had the answer. Anyway, because any other shape, if you take the lid, it will fall in. But a circular one will never fall in.
So Google has a lot more questions like that than Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we know now we can apply to Facebook and not Google. Okay. Discussing your pay grade, pay scale at Meta, I assume it was a pay increment, or rather, I hope it was a pay increment. What's that discussion like? One, being paid in a foreign currency, and then 2, as I guess a black person, and 3, coming, I guess, also from Kenya, because I guess I gather that, many times as Africans or black people, we undersell ourselves, we undercharge. They would pay a white person with the same set of skills a lot more money than you. So are these any thoughts that you're having as you now been told you've got the job and now you're discussing the potential offer?
Yeah. So actually a good chunk of time I spent during the interview process was just researching compensation. The biggest challenge is because it's a different country, you kind of don't have a context of, is this amount a good amount or a bad amount? So I would say I had done a lot of research. So which is always the thing. Do a lot of research as much as you can around how much are people paid, how much is a good amount, what's the average income in the country that you're going to, what's the housing situation, and things like that. So I had done all that research. And then the other thing I was also informed, or I found out through the research, was it's not always a good idea to reveal your current salary, because they might use that as a basis to now give you an offer, which is not really relevant in this context. So obviously I was not able to share my current salary.
Did they ask you for it and you tell them, I wouldn't give it to you?
I think, because recruiters always want to ask you where you're coming from, because they're also trying to get you at a good price. So so I think we didn't do a negotiation. They gave me an offer. It was, and I'd done my research. So I kind of, coming into the negotiation, had an amount that I was comfortable with based on all the research I'd done. And then the amount they gave me was slightly above that. So I was like, I'm okay with this.
Okay, that's good. But I also wanted to find out, because I guess I've seen, when you see on these jobs on Indeed and LinkedIn and all those, especially some foreign ones, they usually give you a range automatically. They're like, this role will be between X and X. So did you find that they were more upfront about how much they would pay you vis-a-vis the Kenyan employers that you had here?
Yeah, so I think what I liked also, and I think companies have it as well, is they have pay based on different levels. And so you can have the same title as someone, but you can have like 3 different levels of pay. And they usually determine your level based on the experience you've had. So if you're an entry level, they have a scale for entry level. And then after 2 to 3 years, you have another scale, and 3 to 4. So obviously he mentioned that based out of my years of experience, this is the level that they will bring me in, and this is the compensation for that level. It's often standardized, actually. So if you do, because I've had to ask other people around, it's often standardized. So you'll find that if you're doing the same role at the same level with someone, you'll probably be earning the same amount base salary.
Right.
It gets complex because there's stock options. And depending on when you joined, you got stock at a different valuation, similar to Bitcoin. And so that could be the thing. And then also performance-based. So as you stay in the company, you get increments based on the ratings and performance that you deliver. So now it can then vary. But oftentimes, if you're doing same role in the same country, and you're in the same job group, you
essentially will very much be like
similar,
the similar pay scales.
Range.
Okay. What did now working in Ireland and working for Meta do for your financial journey?
So it really accelerated some of the things I was doing in Kenya, but also took time to just understand, because it's a different market, it's a different currency. There's always a temptation to always do the math of comparing. So I think for the first few months, I was always doing the math and comparing prices abroad with Kenya shillings. And then the euro at some point went super high to like 180. So it's been an interesting journey, but I think it helped me accelerate some of the things that I've been like investing in, because now I have like a bigger income, and I'm able to do a lot more.
Okay.
I think that's
so when you say accelerate, as far as we're aware, there's the emergency funds, there's the digital stuff you're exploring. Are there other investments that you then took on? Are there like businesses or things that you're putting money into, or is it just you put more amounts of money in these products?
So obviously, like something like an emergency fund, as you move to a different city, obviously you need a bigger amount.
Yeah.
But also at Safaricom, my sister again also convinced me to get into property and buy a piece of property, which was one of the big things which we had a lot of back and forth on. And at Safaricom, there's like a staff rate that you get. So you get better rates on loans and different products. So that was one of the things where I was able to do just before I left. And then now I was able to really accelerate and complete the payment once I moved, because it was something that it was a payable on my expenses, and it would have taken me maybe so many years, but then now I was able to accelerate and pay it off quite quickly. Yeah.
And I mean, usually when you work for a company and they give you certain benefits, those benefits usually end the minute you leave, no? So
yeah.
Okay, so it was good that you were earning more.
Yeah,
because
because now those staff rates, the normal rates kick in, and if you know about the interest rates right now, they would have been like super high.
Yeah.
So also that gave me incentive to really clear it as fast as possible, so that you kind of not have that extra payment that you need to do.
So, and these times when you were seeing the euro really going up, did you ever change currency just so that you can and have it in a Kenyan account just so that you can make money. So for example, I know that there's when the dollar fell from 160 to came back to 120, 130s, I had some money in dollars and I lost an amount of money, which of course if I had translated to Kenya shillings I'd have made a lot of money, which essentially is what Forex is, what we're doing here. So did you during those periods, especially when the Kenya currency wasn't doing as well as it is now, did you ever purposefully, on a regular basis, change money to keep more Kenya shillings?
So I did with these things. I tried to also put logic back to my thing. I did try that, but sometimes you really can't predict where it's gonna go. So I noticed if you try to move currencies across, if you try to move money across currencies, and you're spending, like if you move it to Kenya shillings and then you have an expense in Dublin or you're traveling and you have to pay, it then becomes more expensive to change it back.
Yes.
So I think currently I'm trying to just not do unnecessary changes of currency. So if I'm saving in euros, I just keep it in euros so that if I need to have expenses in euros, I can use that. And then the same for Kenya shillings. Just because trying to beat the system sometimes is not as profitable. But I did do that. But I also was on the losing end.
Yeah.
So I changed money when it was low and then it went a lot higher.
I think you should have talked to these guys, FXPesa. They would have, they can help you figure out how to meet it at the right point in time. Okay. So so where are you at now financially? Like what's your goals? Because I don't know if it's the same experience for you, but if you're saying you're living abroad, do you feel like you want to come back to the country? Do you feel like financially it still makes sense for you to stay there? What are your plans in that sense?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's a key plan for me is now to get into home ownership. So that's something I've been saving towards, and it's something I'm hopefully going to do soon. But yeah, that's like for me, like kind of the next step in my journey as I turn 30, because I'm turning 30 in a few months' time. So I'd want to get into buying a house in Dublin, because essentially that's where I see myself spending a few more years, and then figure out the next steps. I don't have a clear plan of I need to be here by this year and this year. So at this point in time, I'm happy there. I get to travel a lot. So the good thing about my role, it allows me to travel quite a bit. So I'm able to come here as often as I need to. And yeah, I get to also build a good network on the other side.
Okay. Hypothetically speaking, I don't like, and I know a lot of people also don't like speaking in hypotheticals and things like that. If you had stayed here and you hadn't applied for the job to Meta, what would have been the stark differences between your life now vis-a-vis where it is, where you're talking about potentially owning a home in Dublin and exploring into that? How many more years would you have left to pay on the Safaricom loan if you wouldn't have taken that opportunity?
So significant. I think it's a significant change because you mentioned the main thing I think is the currency advantage. So you find that people relocate to, or people come from different countries like the US to Kenya. They get to do more with their money just because of the strength of the dollar, euro, pound. So I think investing here, earning in euros, obviously gives you a big advantage, and that has really like shortened the time. Like I don't know how many years it would have taken me, to be honest, to do that, and also helped me known of new opportunities. Like I don't think like 4 years ago owning a house in Europe would have been something that I'd be talking about. So I think those are the two things. So it's helped me move things faster. It helped that I had some things going on, because I feel like there's also the risk of not having a plan, and then that could also not turn out very well. But yeah, I think it's just helped accelerate some of the things I was doing. Yeah.
Okay. As we wrap up, as you've come back, because clearly you say you come back and visit quite often. As you've come back, have you seen very big differences between you and where the colleagues that you left here, whether it's Safaricom, whether it's at the agency, and things that either they've grown financially in a way you haven't grown, or you've grown financially in the way they haven't grown? And this is aside from the currency, a lot more money, a lot more liquidity conversation. Yeah.
So I think this can take us back to where we began on the 5 things about finances. So I think there's different levels. So there's the financially part, which is I feel I've grown the most just because of the earning. But then there's different things in life where it's like social. How much time do you get to hang out with your friends? I think living abroad, you miss so many life events, and also social. There's something called social capital, which I'm very big on. Is you miss to be there for on different moments, which are important and could help you a lot in the future. So I try as much as possible to keep touch with a lot of people and spend a lot of time hanging out with different people when I'm in the country. But I think that's the key difference. So I feel like I'm a bit removed from what's going on in terms of just being there every other weekend and every other month. And that's, I think, has been the biggest, the difference that I've seen with my friends and colleagues.
Okay. My last question. I'm being raised in a, I guess, single parent home. And I mean, like you said, you're the last born, 13-year difference between you and your sister. And now you are earning all this currency money, all this money in a different currency and making, I guess, a good amount of money. Have you done anything, or did you ever feel obligated to do something financially for your mom? And has that been something that you have regularly done, or was it like a one-time thing? Yeah.
Yes, so I did, and I really hold her in high regard because of the kind of, when your parents tell you how much they used to earn, and within your like third job you're already earning a lot more than that. It shows you how much sacrifices they had to keep. So I did, and have been contributing to her well-being. Unfortunately, she passed on shortly after I left, so a few years back. So one of the things that I think I just feel bad is that she never got to visit me abroad, but I think she was proud of me, and I was able to help her as much as I could when I was away, and
Yeah.
ever all through my life,
Yeah.
because I think that's the only person I think I know and has been with me throughout.
Well, first of all, terribly sorry, I guess, for passing away your mom. But yeah, I guess at least she did get to enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% sure she's extremely proud of you. I mean, I'm proud of you, and I don't even know you, so. So I think she's definitely proud. Yeah. So I guess for me, I think it's been a really interesting episode and really interesting lessons. I think your journey is unique.
It's very
Everyone who sat there has a very unique money journey, but from you investing in Bitcoin early on and even trying out crypto, and the way that you've gone about getting into Ireland and the different things that you've explored financially and where your financial goals are, I think being able to recognize the privilege that you sit in now with the work that you've put in, I think it's amazing. I hope, I wish all the best for you. I hope you make more money. Please buy the house in Ireland.
Thank you. I think
maybe we'll come visit.
you should.
Yeah,
You should.
that's financially incorrect.
What I'll say, I think,
Yeah.
is what I'd give maybe as a piece of advice is to leverage your network. I think that's what has worked for me all through. And that's just a fancy way of saying talk to your friends and tell them what you want to do, and leverage the people around you. I've referenced my sister quite a lot. She's not like a financial guru, but she's just been someone who's been older than me and seen more stuff. It's often harder in your 20s to listen to advice because the easy option is just to do what you think is right. It's your money, you're earning it. It's nobody even knows how much you earn. So I think that's the one thing I'd like to say is leverage the people around you. If it's your cousin, your friend, it doesn't have to be someone who's like super knowledgeable about finance, but if they're older, just ask for advice and take it as much as you can. Yeah.
My last question, and this may, and again, I give a lot of explanations and context, but I'm not trying to be crude. But it seems like even as you were sort of early 20s making money, because of the conversations you're having with your sister and your mom, you were financially sound. I mean, in terms of the way that you're spending your money, even that piece of land that you bought that you didn't end up buying
Reluctantly.
helped you put money aside. And so my question is around, again, goes back to around sort of dating and what that looked like at that time. Do you feel, or would it be a narrative to say that at the time, possibly people thought, you weren't as fun or as cool, and you weren't spending money at parties and at things that other people your age would at now, and through the investments that you then made then, even putting money in crypto and eventually Bitcoin and etc, and now you're at turning 30, who's sitting here talking about buying a house in Dublin, having finished a loan quicker than they should have, essentially sounding like a very sound financial person and this is again through our Love and Money event, solid attributes for someone who would be looking for a partner and things like that. Do you think that the way you're viewed now has changed as a result of the decisions that you made in that sense?
So the earlier part of your question was around how I was able to do that. I think having a long-term perspective helped. It's hard, I have to relate, because I didn't make all the right decisions. So I bought a lot of phones which I lost, and that was like very poor financial decisions. My friends know that. But I think thinking long-term, and this is obviously helped through talking to older people, because older people have seen this thing. You get a job, it's a high-paying job, you can decide to give yourself 1 year to make bad decisions. So I think thinking long-term has really, really helped me. But I wouldn't say, so I would say obviously I was not the most fun person all through, but I also wasn't the most boring person all through. So my friends could be the judge for that. But I was a bit careful around how much you spend, how much you keep, because it's always about how much you retain more than how much you earn. And I was always keen about just committing my new income into things that I think I can look back later and see the value in them.
Okay. But right now you can definitely say that your value in that respect it's definitely gone up in the respect of, I guess what people look for in partners and what people look for in stability. Because, I guess at some point, as we will be discussing again, like I've said at this event, love's good, but, money is it helps.
It could be a double-edged sword, because now you can also get to meet people who are maybe interested in you because of different financial things that they expect to get from you. So I'd say it depends on the kind of person that you meet.
I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
It's very political. It's a very media trained guy, this guy, I'm telling you. Very politically correct answers. Anyway, thanks for listening to the episode of Financially Incorrect. We will see you guys next week, next Friday. Please remember to buy your tickets for the Love and Money Festival. Link will be in the description box. See you next week.